Today we're going to dive in with a synth that some call revolutionary. At first glance it looks like a normal piano keyboard, but when you touch the keys you can feel something is exceptionally different here. We can bend notes. We can lean into chords. And we can create soundscapes that in the not so distant past required meticulous sound design and editing on a computer or on the dials of the synth. Today's video is brought to you by Sweetwater, where you can get personalized gear advice from gear experts, fast and free shipping, a free 2-year warranty on your purchases, and payment options for every budget. Consider making your next gear purchase at Sweetwater. When you support the sponsor, you support the channel. MPE controllers and instruments are one of the biggest innovations that we're currently living through in music technology, in my opinion. And previous iterations have us interacting with a surface that is not quite the same as an actual piano keyboard. But now we have the Osmose by Expressive E. The Osmose is both a synth and a controller, and I want to start by showing you some sounds that come included with the synth. I'm not usually drawn to the sounds that sound like super synthy, variations on a saw wave, but they can be a lot of fun to play on a keyboard like the Osmose. Most of the sounds I chose from the Osmose library, hopefully you haven't heard many of them before, as they're slightly more delicate sounds. One of the best use cases for MPE, I think, is for real acoustic sounds, especially like woodwind, like flute sounds. You can use pressure to adjust the amount of air. And that parameter I was just adjusting was the mouth shape of this flute sound, which is pretty cool. Of course, strings, it's the same principle. If you can control your vibrato. Just listen to that texture, that rubber bandy kind of sound, by applying pressure to the keys. And here's a sound preset that takes advantage of lifting off. You can hear a distinct percussion sound when lifting from the keys. And then even more dynamic texture when applying pressure. I started to go down a rabbit hole of all the really cool texture-y kind of sounds. It's just fun to control the nuances of a sound like this with just your fingertips, no knobs required. Here's a preset where the rhythm, or the speed of the rhythm on each note, is changing based on pressure. You can come up with really cool polyrhythms this way. And of course, you can find very beautiful but also traditional sounds. I really love this electric keyboard. But there is something special about it. Now, I've already alluded a lot to the pressure, and unlike most Aftertouch keyboards that you've probably played, the Osmose has probably the best implementation of it, because when you rest your fingers on the keys, you meet a natural stopping point. But then, there's a cushion that you can push beyond the natural stopping point, meaning you don't feel like you're going to break the keys. You feel like this is something you're supposed to be doing on this keybed. If you're scared of too much bending, it's something you can change the sensitivity of or just outright turn off. There's also a built-in arpeggiator where you have the distinct control over each note in whatever chord or notes you're arpeggiating through. Bending individual notes, accenting different notes, it's all at your fingertips. Definitely more than your average arpeggiator. We've got pitch and mod, so a modulation fader that you can slide up and down, and the pitch bend, which will snap back into place at the center. For hands-on control, if you're controlling something else with your MPE gestures. There's also an assortment of built-in audio effects that you have a fair amount of control over. And it's easy navigating around these menus, the buttons and knobs all sync up in an intuitive way. Another really interesting feature here is called pressure glide, which is exactly what it sounds like. You glide between two notes using pressure. So as you ease onto one note, you tip the scales, pitch-wise, back over to that note. You have control over what interval this is effective at, so if you only want to do pressure glide for half steps or one semitone, you can set it accordingly, but if you want to do like full octave glides or beyond, you can also do that. So as I started becoming familiar with the synth, I couldn't just wait to just sit down and sample this thing, which is what we're going to do now. We're going to do something that I've been growing fond of in my music making process. We are going to just create some ambient music that is meant to become a sample. Basically, it's about sitting down and making music where the end result isn't all that crucial. Combining the cool textural sounds of the Osmose with the microcosm, it just creates a whole nother world of sound. It's a setup I could experiment with for hours and hours. It really is the best of both worlds because you get that weighty key feeling. So if you want to play something like a traditional piano line, you can easily do that on the Osmose's keys. But when you want to play some of the more textural stuff and play with some of the more MPE gestures, pressure and bending, you can also do that. Suddenly this became like a spooky Skyrim late night tavern vibes. I don't know how that happened. I'm increasingly more and more excited by the prospects of doing different cool percussion things on the Osmose, and it makes me wonder if they might develop another percussive-based controller that isn't bound to like traditional piano keys. I mean, pushing this instrument beyond just being percussive and like breathing through it is really something special. Now we've got our sample material here, and I do want to go ahead and chop this up and turn this ambient soundscape into a beat. But before we do that, I want to talk about maybe the elephant in the room. How does this thing compare to other MPE keyboards? I would say the main rival for the Osmose is Roly's Seaboard Rise 2. The Seaboard Rise 2 is not a synth, it is purely a controller, though Roly does make Equator, their own MPE synth, which you can use on the computer. And obviously, at first glance, these controllers are very, very different. The Seaboard is a silicone surface that you sort of sink into. It's not traditional keys at all. But what this allows for is you can glide around the keyboard. You can glide up and down and side to side. It's a really natural, fluid movement, but it is quite different from playing traditional keys. Juxtapose that against the Osmose, we obviously can't slide between notes, we get our pitch bend, but Expressive V's solution to that is pressure glide, which I've got to work perfectly fine with the Osmose itself and the built-in synth. I could not for the life of me get it to work with virtual instruments, which is kind of a bummer. I will say though that sliding between notes feels to me a lot more natural and controllable than pressure glide in general. But I do think with a bit more practice I could start to get the feel for pressure glide and achieve like the intentional results that I would need to on this keyboard. Now, Roly does also make the Lumi keys, and the biggest one they make are these sort of mini 25 key keyboards that can connect magnetically, so you can combine multiple of them together. These are part learning tool, part MPE controller, and they actually do really well with the expression that comes along with MPE. That being said, the quality level and feel of the keys is nothing compared to the Osmose. Key travel is nearly non-existent on the Lumi, though you can still get some really good pressurized sound, and vibrato works really well too. But again, nothing compared to the Keybed on the Osmose. Roly also has a bit of an advantage here with having these smaller controllers like the Lumi keys and the Seaboard block, a smaller version of their Seaboard. This makes it a lot more affordable for those of you that want to get into MPE but are on a budget. You can't afford a $1,700 synth or the $1,200 or $1,300 Seaboard Rise. The Roly keyboards come with Roly Studio as an editor and Equator, which is Roly's synth, while the Osmose also comes with an editor, the Hawken editor. But if I put these side by side, I think you can tell that one of them is a lot less user-friendly than the other, and I think that's a huge thing in the world of MPE when these keyboards and this synth, they're meant to be used for sound design and kind of complicated sound design too. So it's really important to have accessible software editors that are not a pain to use, or that I don't need a Rosetta Stone to decode. I don't know, y'all can challenge me on that if you think the Hawken editor looks approachable and fun. Usually when making these comparisons, people hone in on one thing and say like, oh, that's the reason that this one is better than this one. And I really want to drive home that this is a nuanced comparison, and there would be reasons to choose the Osmose over a Seaboard, and there would also be reasons to choose the Seaboard over the Osmose. It's really going to come down to personal preferences. I don't think we can put one on a pedestal and say this one wins. I think they're just two different approaches to MPE, and I can't say one is better than the other. They're just two different. But for you, of course, one might be better than the other because of a specific preference you have. That's different than just saying that one is better than the other overall. But let's get back to the music making. I took that ambient sample we made before and chopped it up. Make your own samples, people. But of course, we've got that chop. Let's throw some drums over it. We're immediately going into like an old school hip hop vibe, which is not the direction I thought we would go in tonight. This is what happens when you start making beats late into the evening. But, of course, we get to use the Osmose more. Took me a while to really hit this bass line groove here. Layering these chords in here, and you can hear we've totally departed from the original sample, which can still be used when this beat gets finished, but I'm never too precious about the process. At this point, it starts getting a little too late into the evening, and I just start getting really way too tired to be playing a synth solo like this. You can let me know how you think this beat turned out in the comments down below, and definitely not the direction I thought we'd be going with this beat. But I'm also going to include the stems for sort of like the ambient bed as well as the beat for channel members. So if you want to join and become a channel member, get access to that, as well as our Discord server. You can submit your music for track feedback and things like that. That's how you can best support the channel and get some stuff in return. I want to thank Sweetwater for sponsoring today's video. All the links you see below will be Sweetwater affiliate links. So if you want to pick up some gear at no additional cost to you, it does help support the channel. And I think that's going to be it. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been TAETRO. Have a good one.